Tyreek Hill has shocked NFL fans after announcing that he's now working as a DJ in Miami while recovering from knee surgery. But with Hill currently a free agent and no clear return timeline in sight, people are starting to wonder if the Cheetah may have already played his final snap in the NFL. Here's what's happening. Tyreek Hill's situation had been building for months, since the day the Miami Dolphins wide receiver suffered a brutal season-ending injury that left the NFL holding its breath. Then, on May 24th, 2026, NFL insider Dov Kleiman dropped a post on X that broke the internet. Breaking free agent wide receiver Tyreek Hill has announced that he is now a DJ in Miami. Hill has been mastering his craft while recovering from knee surgery and fell in love with EDM. Tyreek might have played his last down of football. That's it. That's the tweet. No new team announcement, no training camp workout video, no signing day photo. Just Tyreek Hill, 8-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, former Super Bowl champion, one of the best receivers of his generation, behind a DJ booth in Miami playing house music. The 8-time Pro Bowler had actually been hinting at this transition for months, posting footage on social media of himself working a Pioneer DDJ-1000 controller. He captioned one of those videos, "Up to something," the type that turned to something. At the time, most people thought it was just something to pass the time during rehab. A hobby, a distraction, something to keep his competitive mind occupied while his knee healed. But as the 2026 NFL offseason dragged on with zero contract news, the hobby started looking less like a pastime and more like a plan. Among all unsigned wide receivers across the NFL, Tyreek Hill is currently the 4th best available, and he certainly has the most prestigious resume of the bunch. He is 32 years old and coming off a torn ACL that he suffered early in the 2025 season. The NFL draft has come and gone. Training camp is approaching, and the man some still call the fastest player in football history is unsigned, unattached, and apparently very comfortable behind a pair of turntables. Hill is the biggest name remaining in NFL free agency, but it is looking increasingly unlikely that the former All-Pro will be signing with a new team anytime soon. ESPN's Adam Schefter went on the Pat McAfee show and said it was likely that veteran free agents like Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, and Deebo Samuel would play the waiting game to find a good landing spot. Tyreek Hill has an injury situation where he might not be ready until midway through the season. That may be a down-the-line thing, Schefter said. Hill is recovering from a torn ACL that he suffered on September 29th of last year. And now there's the DJ announcement on top of it all. According to NFL.com, Hill's career could be nearing an end, and he appears to be exploring life after football, which in Miami apparently means becoming the newest name in the EDM scene. If Hill does successfully become a DJ, he wouldn't be the first professional athlete to go down that road. Perhaps most notably, Basketball Hall of Famer Shaquille O'Neal goes by DJ Diesel and has performed at a number of festivals, including Lollapalooza. But the comparison stops there, because Shaq's basketball career was already over when he picked up the headphones. Hill's football career, still technically an open question. Free agent wide receiver Tyreek Hill is projected to sign a new contract with either the Kansas City Chiefs or Las Vegas Raiders, or at least that was the projection. Now, with the DJ news breaking, the question is whether any projection still makes sense. What we do know is this: the story of how Hill got here is one of the most dramatic arcs in recent NFL history, and it starts on a Monday night in September 2025. To understand why a DJ announcement from Tyreek Hill lands with the weight that it does, you have to go back to Monday, September 29th, 2025. The Miami Dolphins were hosting the New York Jets on Monday Night Football. The game was tight, and Hill was doing what Hill does, making plays, commanding attention, terrorizing the secondary. Through 3+ quarters, he was having the kind of performance that reminds you why he was still, at 31 years old, one of the most feared players in the sport. Hill sustained the injury during that Week 4 Monday Night Football game against the New York Jets on September 29, 2025. With 13:21 left in the third quarter, he caught a pass for his 6th reception of the night, planted his left foot near the sideline, and twisted his knee severely while being tackled by Jets defensive back Malachi Moore. His leg bent at an unnatural angle, prompting immediate medical attention. Trainers cut off his cleat, applied an air cast, and carted him off the field. Before hospital transport, the stadium went silent. Players from both sidelines went down to one knee, and everyone watching on TV understood, without needing an announcement, that something was very, very wrong. Hill was carted off the field and then quickly taken to a hospital, and the star playmaker's injury was indeed season-ending. He suffered a dislocated knee and multiple torn ligaments, including a torn ACL, which ended his 2025 campaign. A knee dislocation is a rare but severe injury, in which the tibia and femur lose their normal alignment at the knee joint. It is not the same as a patellar dislocation. It involves the major bones rather than merely the kneecap slipping. In other words, this wasn't the standard ACL tear that NFL players routinely return from within a year. This was structurally different, structurally more dangerous, and structurally more uncertain in terms of recovery. From an orthopedic standpoint, this is among the most dangerous lower limb injuries, not only for an athlete's career, but for limb viability. The popliteal artery lies just behind the knee. The immediate concern in the locker room wasn't just whether Hill would play again. It was whether the blood supply to his leg was intact. Hill's agent Drew Rosenhaus quickly confirmed, "There is no nerve damage, no blood flow issues, no broken bones. The cartilage is fine." That was the first and most important piece of good news. Hill underwent a major procedure to repair his dislocated left knee and multiple torn ligaments, including his ACL. And his surgery went very well according to his doctors, Rosenhaus said. According to Rosenhaus, everything was done with one procedure, as multiple surgeries were considered a possibility. He added that the goal was for Hill to be back by the start of 2026, but the football world wasn't done processing the scale of what had just happened. Hill had finished with just 21 receptions for 265 yards and a touchdown after 4 games, and had been on a pace that would have led the Dolphins in receiving. He was gone for the year, and Miami, without their most dangerous weapon, would spend the rest of the season fighting just to stay relevant. The injury did more than end Hill's season. It put his entire career on a clock and started a chain of events that would eventually lead to a DJ booth. Here is where the story gets into the kind of numbers that make NFL front offices sweat. When Tyreek Hill suffered that knee injury in Week 4 of 2025, he wasn't just a player going down with a torn ACL. He was a player sitting on one of the largest contracts in the history of the wide receiver position, and the Dolphins had a decision to make. Upon his arrival in Miami prior to the 2022 season, Hill quickly signed a 4-year, $120 million deal that made him the highest-paid wide receiver in the NFL. That deal was later restructured. Hill signed a 3-year, $90 million contract extension before the 2024 season, keeping him under contract through 2026, with 3 void years to ease the cap hit. His cap hit in 2026 sat at $51 million. $51 million. For a 32-year-old coming off a dislocated knee and multiple torn ligaments. That is not a number any NFL front office can absorb on a wing and a prayer. The verdict was swift. The 5-time first-team All-Pro was in the 2nd year of his 3-year contract extension with Miami. And league sources expected the Dolphins to release Hill before the start of the new league year in March 2026. They viewed it as next to impossible that the Dolphins would guarantee such money, when Hill would not be able to pass a physical at that point. NFL Network insider Tom Pelissero laid it out in stark terms. As for wide receiver Tyreek Hill, he also has a trigger on March 13th. $16 million would be locked in. He is coming off a major injury. It is unclear at this point when, or even if Tyreek will be ready to play in 2026. The health, plus his age at 32, plus the money, all pointed to Tyreek being out in Miami. ESPN analyst Marcel Louis-Jacques had been even more blunt back in January. There's no way Hill returns on his current deal, if at all. On February 16, 2026, the Dolphins released Hill, making him an unrestricted free agent for the first time. The 4 cuts the Dolphins made that day, including Hill, cleared over $56 million in 2026 cap space. As new head coach Jeff Hafley and general manager John Eric Sullivan began to completely remake the roster, the Dolphins took a $28.2 million dead cap hit in 2026 due to releasing him before June 1. Hill's response was telling, "The Cheetah will be back." He wrote on an Instagram post bidding farewell to the Dolphins after his 4-year stay in Miami Gardens. "Miami, you have become my home. But the journey doesn't end here." Those words, "the journey doesn't end here," looked like a promise, a declaration. A man who had been hit by a freight train of an injury, stripped of a $51 million contract, cut loose from the only NFL home he'd known outside of Kansas City, and was still showing his teeth. But promises on Instagram and the reality of the NFL free agent market are two very different things. And as the weeks turned into months, the contract Hill expected to be chasing never materialized. The Dolphins released Tyreek Hill in February. By May, the NFL draft had concluded. Rookies were reporting to off-season programs. Teams were filling their rosters, and Hill, 8-time Pro Bowler, 11,363 career receiving yards. Future Hall of Famer still didn't have a team. Free agent wide receiver Tyreek Hill intended to play in the 2026 season. After taking his time during rehabilitation from a torn ACL, his agent Drew Rosenhaus made the rounds going on TV and radio to reassure anyone who would listen. He had a really tough injury. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill ACL, Rosenhaus said. During an appearance on the Stephen A. Smith Show, it was a multiple ligament injury, and he absolutely is on track for the start of the regular season. Rosenhaus said Hill was waiting until medical clearance to sign with a new team, and that he wanted to play for a contender. That last part is important. Hill wasn't just waiting to sign anywhere. He was holding out for a championship contender, which in the context of a complicated recovery and zero guaranteed contract offers, was either admirable conviction or a very uncomfortable gamble. The league's reaction was revealing. Hill had garnered zero interest from teams as he continued recovering from his knee injury. Teams like the Kansas City Chiefs were monitoring the situation, but it might be a while before he signed with a roster. And then one anonymous NFL general manager went on record and said what many in the league were apparently thinking. If he can't take the top off a defense anymore, what are you bringing him in for? I think he's going to have a long wait. That quote cut straight through all the agent optimism. Tyreek Hill's entire value proposition to an NFL team has always been built around one thing: speed. Devastating, leave the cornerback on an island, change the math of a defense speed. For an elite athlete like Hill, the rehab must not only restore basic function, but also elite-level speed, cutting ability, and deceleration capacity, with no allowance for residual laxity or hesitation. Though Hill was aiming to return by the start of next season, injuries such as these can end careers. At 31, now 32, Hill might have lost some production, but his blazing speed had still altered defenses. The question wasn't whether Hill could physically run. The question was whether he could still run fast enough to make a defensive coordinator lose sleep on a Saturday night. And no team was willing to bet big money on that answer without seeing it in person first. There have been only 3 wide receivers who tore their ACL at age 30 or older and then produced at least 750 receiving yards in a future season since 1995. Jordy Nelson, injured at 30 in 2015, won 257 yards in 2016. Julian Edelman, injured at 31 in 2017, 850 yards in 2018. And Reggie Wayne, injured at 34 in 2013, 779 yards in 2014. 3 wide receivers in 3 decades. That is the mountain Hill is staring at. And those 3 players were dealing with standard ACL tears, not knee dislocations with multiple torn ligaments simultaneously. Hill's injury was categorically more complex. Recovery from multi-ligament knee surgery typically spans 9 to 12 months for elite athletes, positioning a potential 2026 return, though full-speed restoration for a 31-year-old reliant on explosive bursts remains uncertain. A projected 1-year deal of around $10 million was floated, a number that tells its own story about how far the market had moved from the $120 million franchise cornerstone Hill once was. Despite last season's injury, Hill should command considerable interest from playoff-anxious suitors in need of a reliable target. The Buffalo Bills, Baltimore Ravens, Los Angeles Chargers, San Francisco 49ers, and New England Patriots come to mind. But interest and offers are 2 entirely different things, and the off-season calendar kept turning with no deal in sight. So here we are, May 24th, 2026. Tyreek Hill is a free agent, has been since February, and his latest public statement is not a workout video, not a press conference, and not a contract announcement. It's a DJ set in Miami, and the question everyone is now openly asking is this the end? Let's be honest about what the DJ announcement is and what it isn't. Hill has already found a new hobby to keep his fast-paced lifestyle moving. He is officially a DJ, but not all hobbies turn into a profession. When asked if he was taking up music as his post-NFL career choice, he said, "Nah, not for real. It's just something that I'm doing in my pastime." He told people, Back in November 2025, before the free agency silence, Hill was very clear. "I feel like I'm a guy who can do a lot, man. I love DJing. I love cars. So I also got my car dealership license. I'm also trying to get back into school." That was a man actively broadening his identity. Someone who, even while publicly insisting he wanted to play again, was laying down roots in a life beyond football. And you can't blame him for it. Plenty of rumors swirled involving Hill and the Dolphins, and the star receiver said it might be time to have a conversation about his career. "And I'm at the point now where I need to have a conversation with mom, family, everybody," Hill said via the Palm Beach Post. But now Dove Kleiman is reporting that Hill has mastered his craft while recovering, that he fell in love with EDM, and that he might have played his last down of football. That language from a credible NFL insider is a significant shift. This isn't a passive observation about a hobby anymore. It's a legitimate flag on the play. Nobody is going to sign Tyreek Hill until he can prove he is healthy. Even before his knee injury, Hill was 31 and past the age where receivers typically start slowing down. This was evident in his 2024 production, as he was still a good player but didn't come close to matching his early career numbers. Now entering his age 32 season and working his way back from a devastating knee injury, nobody knows how much is left in the former All-Pros tank. The Chiefs remain the most discussed destination. Hill's history with the organization is the biggest reason for the potential reunion, but the Chiefs could also use another wide receiver. Despite winning 2 Super Bowls without Hill, Kansas City has yet to find a proper replacement for his role in the offense. Fox Sports' Ben Arthur wrote about how Hill to the Chiefs still remains the most logical conclusion. Hill's status for 2026 remains unclear after dislocating his left knee and tearing multiple ligaments, including his ACL, last September. But after an unceremonious end to his Miami Dolphins tenure, a return to the Chiefs makes sense, health enabling. Add in the fact that Patrick Mahomes is returning from a torn ACL of his own, and probably won't have his patented mobility early in the season, and the Chiefs should at least kick the tires on Hill to see if he has anything left in his tank. But here's the verdict, and it's an uncomfortable one. The DJ announcement is not just a headline, it is a signal. When a player of Tyreek Hill's caliber, a man whose entire identity has been built on being the fastest human on a football field, starts falling in love with a new craft, while the NFL treats him like a medical liability, you are watching an athlete begin the process of letting go. Not officially, not in a press conference, not with a retirement speech, but in the way that people actually disengage from the things that no longer serve them, quietly, joyfully, and on their own terms. For years, the speediest and most dangerous deep threat in the NFL, Hill will enter free agency ahead of his age 32 season with 11,363 yards and 83 touchdowns on 819 career receptions. Those numbers belong in Canton. That legacy is already written in stone, no matter what happens next. Whether the decision comes in the midst of free agency or closer to the fall, it will be worth monitoring as the future Hall of Famer sets out for his retirement tour. Tyreek Hill may yet sign with a team. He may yet line up in September and burn a cornerback for 60 yards like nothing ever happened. His agent is still out there, still talking, still making optimistic appearances on sports radio. But if the DJ booth is where Hill keeps finding himself, not the practice field, not the training room, not a team facility, then maybe the most devastating announcement about his NFL future isn't what he said. It's what he didn't say, and what the music is saying for him. The cheetah may not be done running, but right now, in May of 2026, he's running toward the decks, and the NFL is waiting to find out if he ever comes back.